Hello everybody and welcome to another video here on Tabletop Roleplaying Gays. We have a really special cool mini painting one for you guys today. It is another collab, and this time it is the Heroes vs. Villains challenge. I partnered up with the Maniacal Mini for Ock VS Spider-Gwen. I'm pretty sure you know which one I painted. Bane vs. Batgirl, which was Origin Painting and Raqrex Art, and Venom vs. Iron Fist, which was done by Ninetale Hobbies, and We Paint Minis. All of those video links will be down below. There are a couple other people that are participating, but we don't really have updates. So as soon as they're involved, I'm gonna add it. Everybody's logos are gonna be up on screen as I say their names. I'm trying to get better at editing, so there they are. They're up and about. And this is the final product. This really cool Spider-Gwen diorama. She's pretty hefty. I 3D printed her, did the base. All great, funky stuff. She came out really cool. Everybody else's stuff came out really cool. And with that, we're going to get right into the big chunk of this video. I'm going to follow the same path that the Maniacal Mini did and give some really cool history and life and info about Spider-Gwen as we go along. Let's get started. Alrighty, here we are getting into it. First off, I took the model, I primed it black with Vallejo Surface Primer, and I tried to zenithal highlight and block in all of the white with, I think it's Liquitex acrylic ink. The issue is that, like I do every time I try to do something like this, I forget that despite having a solid air compressor and thinning everything and doing everything right, I have a terrible quality airbrush that loves to fight me on just about everything. Overall, it did kind of help a little bit. We didn't lose any detail, and it took the what would have been 30 coats of white down to 20 to get right opacity. The sculpt I 3D printed on an Anycubic photon that myself and a bunch of family members chipped in on so that I could get it and use it for prototyping stuff for board games, doing stuff like this. It's great. I've had some hiccups here and there, but it's a learning curve for a reason. I will be linking this sculpt in the description, and you'll probably notice one major difference, and that is that this one that I'm painting doesn't have a veritable Grand Canyon of cleavage despite being in a spandex suit. That's because I went back in before painting and priming and all of that, and I used some green stuff to fill those gaps in, make sure everything looked the way a human body would in spandex, and then I got on my way. This is super sped up and included in here just to talk about it not working, basically. Now here's the fun bits. Who is Gwen Stacy? Gwen Stacy is in the regular Marvel Universe, Earth 616, the first love of Peter Parker, who dies tragically. Super tragically. Now, years later, I can't remember who, although I'm sure you can find it very easily. I just had trouble. An incredible comic book artist thought, well, that's kind of dumb that she existed just to die, to be a plot device for Peter Parker. So, alternate reality designated Earth 65, Gwen Stacy from Midtown High School gets bitten by a radioactive spider instead. becoming Spider-Woman. Most people lovingly call her Spider-Gwen. She's a drummer in a band called the MaryJanes, consisting of her and Mary Jane Watson, Betty Brant, and Glory Grant. Music like theirs is going to be peppered in all throughout the background and in gaps where I stop talking for once. And you're going to be able to hear that. I wanted to use some awesome envisionings of their music by Married with Sea Monsters, but they disbanded and I couldn't contact them for permission, so I will instead link it. Please listen to it. It's really, really cool. In this part of the video, I'm just blocking in all of the black for her legs and dry brushing on colors to highlight all of the awesome texture from the sculpt. In this universe, not only is Gwen the one that gets bitten by the spider, Peter is the one that dies. Peter Parker, in an attempt to exact revenge on his bullies, uses his incredible science skills to become Earth 65's version of the Lizard. Peter attacks the high school prom, and Gwen subdues him, and in coming down and out of the transformation, he dies due to the chemicals used. Like in the main storyline, Gwen is really hit hard by Peter's death, and it's a catalyst to start using her power to protect other people. J. Jonah Jameson publicly blames her for Parker's death, and her father, NYPD Chief George Stacy, and Captain Frank Castle, who is the Punisher in most worlds, and Detective John DeWolf are tasked with hunting down Spider-Woman. Eventually, she reveals her identity to her father, and he helps her flee and get away from everything. In this part of the video, I'm just blocking in all of the purples, purplish magenta reds, and then the electric blue in all of her webbing. Note to self, don't do it this way, it didn't work great. Where most of you probably know our dear Spider-Gwen is in the Spider-Verse storyline. Now, the movie Into the Spider-Verse is different than the comics, but still very, very good, and if you haven't watched it, you certainly should. But in the Spider-Verse storyline, Gwen from Earth 65 is one of many spider totems across the multiverse, who was recruited in a fight against Morlun and the Inheritors. She's one of many Spider-Women, but she's the only Spider-Woman who is Gwen Stacy, leading to the titular nickname Spider-Gwen. Unfortunately, Gwen, through this line, realizes that almost all other Gwen Stacy counterparts from every other universe are dead, being one of the only ones left. Throughout her adventures, she makes all sorts of allies and fix fights with all sorts of criminals and enemies. It's fantastic, and in her version, she makes best friends with Captain America, who is Samantha Wilson, Reed Richards, and Peggy Carter, the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. In the Secret Wars storyline, Gwen joins the Web Warriors. It was a whole bunch of spiders that have dimensional travel devices who combat threats to other universes, especially worlds that have lost their spider. You can see a very fun blip of this at the very end in the post-credits scene in Into the Spider-Verse. Stick around for it. It ties into this and hints at a sequel, and it's very fun. At some point, Gwen loses her powers, and in her world, the lovely Matt Murdock is very evil. And so is scientist Elsa Brock. They realized that if they combined Peter's lizard serum, certain isotopes can form a version of a Venom symbiote, and Gwen bonds with Elsa Brock's symbiote to restore her abilities. Murdock has her father George attacked, and Gwen almost kills him, and ends up sparing his life as Murdock reveals he was testing to see if she would give in to the power like he did. After this, she reveals her identity and turns herself over to the authorities for what happened when she was Gwenom. She is put in a maximum security shield prison for a year. The clip you just saw, because I'm not talking quite fast enough, was me using electric blue to go in and highlight all the trim. Her costume isn't exactly like that, but I thought it would be cool and break up the colors, and while it was very, very obnoxious and difficult to do, it ended up looking really rad. Here I'm blocking in her face, and I'm going to start blocking in her hair, and just trying to get all of that color in where it needs to be. I also freehanded the the pattern on the inside of her hood, because it's very fun, and I thought it would be an interesting challenge. Just about here is where the zenithal highlight working really would have come in handy. It took many, many, many coats, as you are going to be able to see. Here I am just doing some fun stuff on my phone, putting on new music in the background while trying to slog through the many coats of paint that took to get a decent skin tone and hair tone. Shortcuts are useful. Use them. Spider-Gwen also shows up in one of my favorite lines of hers, is the Spider-Geddon storyline. This is after she serves her prison time for her crimes as Gwenom, before she was in control of the symbiote, and she is believed to have been killed in an explosion. In reality, she survives it, but is stranded on Earth 3109, and her dimensional transport device was damaged. The Gwen of that universe, or that world, who operates as the Green Goblin, this time a hero, creates a dimensional teleportation device for her, and she returns to her world for the fight against the Inheritors. In the final battle, when she shows up and there's just glimpses, people wonder if she's a ghost, so she gets the nickname Ghost Spider. Once all of this is done, Back on Earth 65, she tries to do her best to return to a normal life of being a superhero. Being the lead drummer of the MaryJanes, trying to be friends with Harry Osborn and her father George. Since her identity is no longer secret, it's a little difficult, and there are regular attacks by criminals like J. Jonah's son, Manwolf. It's not his real name, it's his villain name. And her symbiote starts causing lots of issues. In order to solve this, she travels back to Earth 616 to find Eddie Brock, who is our regular Venom. And along with Peter Parker, they learn how to control the Gwenom symbiote, and they save that world from the villain swarm. After she realizes how many of her multiverse counterparts are very much dead, she finally adopts permanently the nickname Ghost Spider. Before going back to Earth 65, she decides that since Earth 616 has plenty of spiders to keep it safe, she sticks around for a little bit and goes to college. Which, funnily enough, she gets enrolled on scholarship that applies specifically to visitors from other worlds and dimensions, since in Marvel this is such a frequent occurrence. She commutes back and forth from her own Earth and 616 to go to classes and get a degree. And honestly, good for her. At this point, you'll see that not a lot is going on. I was waiting for the base coat of all of that green to dry so that I could then chuck on a wash, and I didn't cut the video, so it just stayed there. I figured it's another opportunity to put in some really, really funky music. I also decided to start working on the metallics of the signs and get all of that cracked together. Stacy as Spider-Gwen pops up in a bunch of other lines. There's a version of Spider-Woman that appears in Secret Wars A-Force. There's an Earth 8 Spider-Gwen married to Miles Morales. There's a Spider-Gwen that witnesses Gwenpool, which is a whole nother fun character, defeat Green Goblin and saves her. There's a universe of Spider-Ham where Spider-Gwen is a penguin. And there's another one where Spider-Gwen is in the Guardians of the Galaxy's Avengers, X-Men, Inhumans universe. It's pretty nuts. It's very, very much fun. She's like the Earth 616's Peter Parker Spider-Man in that she's very much a wisecracking heroine and just incredibly sarcastic and very, very fun. She's genuinely a really cool character, and I like her a whole bunch. At this point, I'm sure you can see I've attached the base, and I'm adding, trying to add the LED to the center of the lamppost. I didn't attach it with wire or anything to light it up because I'm not an electrician and I'm not good at that. But I was trying my best. And here I'm taking pieces of FEP that's left over from my resin printer, and I'm cutting out little squares and I'm fitting them into the slots to glue in. At the end of the video I mentioned how the super glue fumes ended up clouding up the glass, or plastic I guess, which is unfortunate because clear it looked really cool, but it is what it is. I already missed the part of the video where it happened, but if you notice there's a really cool detail with her drumsticks in her bag, and I did a tiny little embroidered, hand-painted little GS on her backpack for Gwen Stacy. And here are the final pictures. I hope you liked it. That was a lot of fun. There was some stuff that didn't go great. Like, I mean, you can probably tell that I went back and I added some more white over all of the contrast paint that I didn't water down enough to really even back out the shadows. Get kind of the same purple shading that they did for Into the Spider-Verse. The super glue ended up fogging up the plastic that we had there. I thought that the holes in the top of the lantern would be enough to vent all of those fumes, but it wasn't, and I don't care enough to pull them off and use acetone and clean them and do everything I can to fix that. I'm happy with leaving her where she is. I like the comic panel base. I love all of the lines and it's really cool. I love it so much. I hope you love Spider-Gwen and her story as much as I do, and that you please, please do check out everybody else. They were a delight to work with. They all had really cool videos, and everything came out great. They all made awesome stuff. Hopefully that you guys like this. There's more in the future. If you do, heck, even if you don't, because I enjoy doing this. They were great fun to work with. But thank you for being here with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.